Hi there, my name's Jack, and today I'm going to be going over a new innovation in AI-generated medical imaging software known as Arterys Cardio Deep Learning, or DL, and how it's designed to guide the diagnosis and treatment of cardiovascular disease. So what's the problem? Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death not only in Australia but also worldwide. It is also the second largest contributor towards healthcare expenditure in Australia, just behind musculoskeletal disorders. Its screening processes are often quite tedious, with scans taking quite a lengthy process, taking multiple steps, and manual interpretation often taking longer than it should. And things like these can often delay diagnosis and treatment. As I touched on, manual interpretation can also risk misinterpretation of images and often inter-observability, so how one clinician observes and analyzes data compared to another can often affect the way a patient is treated. So who's affected most by this problem? Now, cardiovascular disease is most prominent in the elderly population, so those aged 85 and above. And this is a problem as we improve our healthcare in Australia. We are starting to witness an aging population, and this can increase the burden of cardiovascular disease as we move through time in the future. Now, the higher mortality rates amongst Indigenous population compared to the non-Indigenous population, and manual screening processes, as I touched on before, can put high amounts of stress on healthcare workers due to how tedious it is and the requirement for a physician to move quickly from one patient to another. So what's the opportunity exploited here? So Arterys noticed a demand for automated, accelerated, and accurate analysis of cardiac MRI images in order to accelerate diagnosis and treatment of cardiovascular disease. So what's the innovation? So Arterys Cardio Deep Learning is the world's first ever AI-based medical imaging solution that was synthesized due to the collaboration between Arterys and GE Healthcare. It first received FDA clearance in 2017, and what it is basically is it utilizes DL algorithms in order to accurately and comprehensively analyze MRI images in 7 dimensions compared to just the 2 dimensions in previous technologies. It allows for a more comprehensive analysis with 3 dimensions in space, 3 in direction and 1 in time. And for each cardiac MRI performed, there are 30,000 different images uploaded into a cloud database to perform visualization and quantification. So it's developed to measure metrics such as cardiac volumes, wall thickness, blood flow, and the presence of scar tissue or abnormalities. If we look here, we can see it in action, how it can interpret images and even data into graphs. So how does this differ from previous methods of analysis? Well, if we look here, we can start at something such as strain imaging, which analyzes the motion of cardiac tissue using something called a speckle pattern, which is found on the myocardium. Now, it utilizes ultrasound, which is a problem because ultrasound only works in the 2 dimensions compared to the 7-dimensional analysis of the AI deep learning platform. It only works in 2 dimensions due to the nature of ultrasound being unidirectional. Now, if we move on to cardiac MRI with contrast agents, so the addition of a contrasting agent to baseline MRI images, we see the generation of something called an intensity curve, which allows for the quantification of things such as perfusion, permeability, and blood flow. And this often requires, once again, manual interpretation. And as I touched on before, the interpretation is only allowed within the 2 dimensions that it provides. Now, this can be generalized as manual tissue characterization, which is often subjective and relies heavily on the expertise of the physician and other factors such as the quality of the MRI image. And this opens up for potential for misinterpretation, which, as you can see here, affects 1 in 5 patients. Now, the process of this is often quite tedious and timely, and can often take between 60 to 90 minutes if you include factors such as patient breath holds, where the patient has to hold their breath for 10 to 20 seconds prior to the exam, which can add an extra dimension, extra obstacle, and can often complicate exams for pediatric patients and elderly patients who potentially might be suffering from lung complications and don't necessarily want to hold their breath repeatedly. So what were the enabling factors that enabled this technology? Well, if we look here, we noticed that deep learning algorithms, knowledge of deep learning algorithms, understanding of cardiac anatomy, physiology, and pathology. The technologies included GE Healthcare's ViseWorks 4D MRI technology, as we see here, one of these nice machines. and which enables the fast production of high quality images, and cloud computing, which improves the efficacy of data storage and allows rapid learning for the deep learning algorithm. Social and political factors, though minimal, there's obviously a growing awareness for cardiovascular disease mortality throughout time. If we start here at 1990 and move to 2013, we can see an increase in global deaths in cardiovascular disease throughout time. And finally, governmental support, so your bodies such as the FDA and TGA and so forth. So what were the resources utilised by Arterys in this context? Well, there was obviously an intellectual resources in terms of the digital learning technology, the collaboration with radiologists and cardiologists, the employment of data scientists and machine learning experts was essential in further developing the technology. If we look to the right here, we can see organisational reputation resources, mainly the collaboration with GE Healthcare, who are a subdivision of a business known in the United States known as General Electric, who according to Forbes were America's most admired company one year, and their branch, GE Healthcare, has an estimated net worth of $38 billion, which is definitely was an essential driver in allowing Arterys to become mainstream. And of course, the FDA approval as well. If we move over to technical, we can see that initially there was concerns regarding the accuracy of the technology, whether it could be implemented, would it be accurate, would it be reliable. But initially they implemented 1,000 different training cases into the algorithm, therefore allowing it to interpret and synthesize 10 million different rules. And also the nature of the cloud-based technology enables the data from all around the world to be introduced to the algorithm for it then to be able to teach itself and become more accurate and reliable over time. Now, financial resources, there were huge amounts of funding from GE Healthcare upon their partnership, around a $12 million investment, and further investments to accelerate global delivery of this product following FDA approval in 2017 and 2020 respectively. Now, what's the timeline of the implementation of this technology? Well, in 2011, it started at Stanford. So Fabian Becker and John Julius completed their degrees. Fabian in Masters of Business and Innovation, and John he's completed his PhD in flow physics and computational engineering. And together they were trying to figure out new ways of making medical services faster and more precise. Then 2013 came the synthesis of Arterys. So Becker and Julius formed Arterys alongside Albert Xiao and Shreyas Basanalawala, who I'll touch on briefly later on. They established Arterys, and followed by that was the 2015 partnership with GE Healthcare. Upon introducing their ViceWorks technology, GE Healthcare invited Arterys to join their program and form a partnership, and upon that Arterys received a hefty $12 million donation to drive the development of their product. Now, in 2016 was their first breakthrough. So Arterys launched their first ever web-based real-time MRI viewer. This to accelerate the diagnosis of cardiovascular disease amongst infants and young children. Now, later on in 2016, they started to receive global attention. So they appeared on the Radiologists Society of North America General Meeting, and also received their CE mark to allow for consumption in Europe. And in 2017, they finally received FDA approval, which was the first ever clearance for cloud-based technology in the United States, and allowed the product to be used clinically. Now, the challenges faced for Arterys mainly surrounded the use of patient data, so they had to comply with regulations to maintain integrity and patient confidentiality, and they did this via the implementation of a PHI service, where that ensured that all personal data was stripped away upon collection of imaging data. Now, there were also concerns regarding the implementation and therefore standardization of this technology. Now, there are no exact indications of the cost of this product. However, the nature of a cloud-based platform means that it removes that requirement for any hardware and software installations. Now, the team involved here, as I touched on, Fabian and John earlier, who are both co-founders. Now, Shreyas Basanalawala was a co-founder as well. He was an associate professor at MRI at Stanford University at the time, in 2013, at the time of Arterys being found. And also Alex Xiao, who's currently a radiologist and chief medical officer at Arterys, was also a co-founder, and he's currently, he was at the time in 2013 a clinical instructor in cardiovascular imaging at Stanford University. Now, in order to drive the partnership between GE Healthcare and Arterys, Yannis Panagiotelis was very essential in that element as the Chief Marketing Officer at GE Healthcare. Now, the impact and uptake, in as little as 10 minutes, they're able to capture flow, function, and anatomy, decreasing scan time by as much as 56% as in one case, as you can see here, and decreasing analysis time from the manual method of 30 minutes to just an automated method of just 15 seconds, improving patient experience as eliminating the need for patient breath holds. And the uptake, though there are no details of uptake available, FDA approval and CE mark enabled this to be distributed in the United States and in Europe. However, the technology is yet to be approved in Australia.